Alright, in this tutorial I'm going to show you how to build something like this, where you have a basic wrecking ball, in this case 2 wrecking balls, that will destroy this tower of cubes. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, I will be using Blender 3.6.8 for this example, but the process is essentially the same in any version 2.8 and newer. Alright. This will be a more simplified version of the ones I've created as far as animations and posted on YouTube. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is hide the camera just to get out of our way, and if you still have the cube, keep it, because we will be using a cube. In my case, I need to add a cube because my default scene doesn't have a cube. Alright, now with this cube here, what I'm going to do is go in the top side view by pressing 7, and I'm going to press 5 to go into orthographic view. And you can see if you're in orthographic view up in the top left, you can press 5 and you're in perspective, press 5 again, you're in orthographic. Alright, now I want to duplicate this cube because this is going to make up our very simple tower. So I'm going to come over here to the modifiers tab, add modifier, and I'm going to choose an array. First thing I'm going to do is duplicate this in this direction by 10. Alright, now we know it's going in the X direction because we have it set to 1. Now with it set to 1, it means these cubes are going to be right up against each other, touching essentially. Alright, well, let's set this to, like, just for an example, like if I was to put this 1.25, then the distance between them is 25% of the width of one of the cubes. But in this case, we want them right up against, so just going to use 1. Alright, like I said, I want 10 cubes, then enter. Now I want to also duplicate these in the Y direction, in the minus Y. So I'm going to go back up to add modifier, add another array, and then change this one, the X to 0, and then change the Y to -1, and then right here set this to 10, so we have 10 cubes, basically 10 by 10 array. Now we need to add another one. For this, I'm going to go on the front side view by pressing 1. Alright, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to go in the Z direction. Add modifier, array, and it's down here. We want it to go in the Z direction, so we're going to change this for the X to 0, and then the Z to 1. And again, it's the same process here. If I wanted a gap, I would just have something more than 1, like 1.25. You see, it's very simple to figure out once you've done it once or twice. Now in this case, I want it to be 20 cubes high. Alright, so basically it's just a tower 10 by 10 by 20. Alright, and it's all made up by cubes. Now, to make these rigid bodies, we need to apply these. So start at the top, click apply, next one, apply, next one, apply. Now you have basically all these cubes, but they're or you have this one object, but it's made up of 2,000 cubes. Alright, so we need to separate these cubes. So press tab to go into edit mode, and then press P, and then choose separate by loose parts. Once again, I pressed P, the letter P, and then separate by loose parts. Alright, now it basically took all the little cubes and created a separate object for those cubes. Now the origin point for all these cubes is right down here. We don't want that. We want each one to have their own origin. So with them all selected, come up here to click tab to exit edit mode, and then come up here to object and set origin to geometry. Now each one has their own origin. Now at this point, we need to add some rigid body properties. Now this one cube down here is still the active cube, because see, that's the one that's the brighter yellow color. So we're actually editing that one, and then we're going to copy all those settings over to the rest of them, but we're keeping it selected just like it is, just because it's easier to do it that way. Now I'll come down here to the physics tab and just click rigid body, and I'm just going to set this to box. You could have left it at convex hull, but it simulates a little bit quicker if it's set to box. And then come here, down here to dynamics, click on that, choose deactivation, and start deactivate it. And the only thing that's doing is it will speed up the simulation time just a little bit by taking these out of the simulation math. I mean, it's not having to calculate the math for the simulation of these until something happens that causes these to be affected. Basically, they're starting off not moving, so there's no need to calculate them until something impacts them or something happens to them that makes them move. Alright, now all of these cubes are not, they don't have these settings yet. We need only this cube right here has these settings, so we need to copy those settings to the rest of the 1999 cubes. Come up here to object. Of course, you have to have all of these selected, and still this one has to be the active one. Object, and then come down here to rigid body, and then down here to copy from active, because it's copying the settings from the active one and adding it to the rest. See, now if I click on one of these, they have the same settings. Alright, now we need to add a floor. This floor will obviously be ground, so I'm going to press 1 to go on the front side view, and I'm going to add mesh plane, and I put the plane right here. I'm going to press S for scale 100 just to make this big, and then press Control A because this will be a physics object also, and anytime you change the size of a physics object, you need to apply the scale. It's not as big of a deal now as it used to be, but in older versions of Blender it would get kind of glitchy if you didn't have the scale applied, but it's a good habit to get into anyway. But you can always see that the scale is applied if all of these show 1. Like if I was to, don't do this part, but S for scale and then just move it or scale it down a little bit, then all these don't show 1. And if I was to press Control A to bring up this menu and click on scale, then all of these show 1, which means the scale has been applied. So I'm going to press Control Z to undo what I just did there. So now we're all back to the same spot. Alright, now what we want to do here, since this is the floor, we want to move this floor to the very bottom edge of these cubes. So with the floor selected, click on this button and then go to nearest face, and then press G for grab, Z, and then just as soon as you move it down a little bit, it will just jump to the edge, to the end, because this right here, the setting is basically saying move this floor to the nearest face. If I don't do this part, grab Z, and see as I move up, it just jumps automatically to the next nearest face. Alright, so I'm going to move it right back down to where it needs to be, which is ground level. Alright, now let's go ahead and build our chain. So I'm going to start off by pressing 1. I'm going to be in front position, looking at it from the front. I'm just going to move everything down, and I'm going to add mesh, and we're just going to use a very basic shape here. I need to turn off snap to face so that I can actually move this around, because that's a little weird. Alright, now I'm going to make this a little twice the size, scale to enter. Alright, Control A because it's going to be a physics object, and we need to go ahead and give us rigid body properties, and we're going to keep this passive because this is what the chain is going to sort of hang from. Alright, now I'm going to, just for simplicity, I'm going to press Shift S to bring cursor to this object. That way whenever we create a new object, it's going to pop up right here. That way it's already basically in line with it. Well, actually, I need to change this. Press 3 to go on the side view, and then just press G for grab, and then move it to the center, about right there. And then once again, Shift S, cursor to select it. Alright. Now press 1 to go back into front side view. Now we need to add a, we need to make the chain itself. So we're going to start off with a torus. Add, mesh, and then torus. Now this torus is inside of this. I'm going to go see see the size of it. We want this to be a little bit simpler, so it's just less geometry. So let's change this to 10. Alright, and then change this to 8, and then change the minor radius to 0.2. Just make it a little bit smaller around. Alright, now I'm going to press tab to go into edit mode, and we'll choose put this on line select or edge select. We'll press A once or twice until nothing is selected, and then press B, and then just basically select 1/2 of it, and press G for grab, and then X for the x-axis, and then just drag it out till it looks about like the shape of a chain link. Alright, then basically exit edit mode, and we can see the point of origin is right here. It's going to throw our center of balance off, so we're going to readjust that so the center of balance is where it should be, which is right in the middle. So come up here to object, set origin to geometry. Alright, now go into front side view by pressing 1, and we're going to bring this link down and have it insert it halfway inside this cube and halfway sticking out the bottom. Rotate Y 90, enter. That's once again R Y 90, enter, and that's to rotate on the Y axis by 90 degrees, and then press G for grab, and then just stick it about right there. Alright, and if we look at it, that's what it should look like. Alright, now we want to take this object, this link, and we need to duplicate it again. Now before we duplicate it, we're going to set this to rigid body, and we're just going to keep this to active, keep all the settings the same. Alright, well actually we'll take this rotation and we'll turn this down to 0.01. Give it a little bit less rotation dampening and a little bit less translation dampening. You really don't have to change these, but it looks more realistic if you set these down to about that number. Alright, now let's press Shift D, duplicate that chain link, press enter. Now we want to rotate this on the Z axis by 90 degrees. R for rotate, Z 90, enter. Now we want to rotate this on the Y axis by 90 degrees. Rotate Y 90, enter. Now press G for grab, and then just bring this down to about right there. G for grab, and just stick it about right there, and let me put it in solid view so we can see what we're actually doing. Basically just interlinking these two chain links. Alright, I'll put it back in wireframe because that's easier sometimes to see what you're doing when it's in wireframe. Now we need to duplicate this link one more time. Shift D, X, and then bring it to about right there, almost touching but not quite, and then press R for rotate, X for the X-axis, and then 90, enter. Alright, now we have a pair. This is where it's going to start going a little bit faster. With this one selected, shift select this one, and then press shift D and then X, and then bring this over to about right there, almost touching but not quite. Alright, since we did all that in one motion, we should be able to press shift R, and then it will just duplicate those each time we press shift R. I'm just pressing shift R several times, and I'm going to make it about that long. I think, yeah, that should be about the right length. Actually, I'm going to take these last two links off because I don't want it to be too long. Alright, now we need to create, we need to connect these links together. Now they're technically connected if we was to use these as meshes instead of, like, let me select one of these. Like if these were set to mesh instead of convex hull, they would technically be connected, and it should work, but Blender just does not work very good with meshes. It's very unstable, so I do it in the better way, which is to use rigid body constraints to connect them together. Alright, now we're going to do this in two steps here. First, we need to connect this cube to this link. So I'll select the cube and then select this link, and then come up here to object, come down here to rigid body, and we need to connect these. So just click connect. Now it brings up this dialog box, and it's set to fixed. We want it to be fixed, and these settings are perfect for this one because we want it to just essentially connect this link to this cube and it not move around. Alright, now the only thing we need to change on this, we need to come over here to the override iterations and set this to, let's say, 200, and we're setting this to a high number because we want this link, this connection, to be strong, and we don't want to use this one. I mean, we can use this setting, but this setting will apply to every rigid body object and constraint in the scene if we adjust this. So we're just going to use the individual settings and override and set it to 200. Alright, now we need to select this one, select that one first, and then I'm just going to zoom out and then press C, the letter C for circle select, and then select the rest of these links. Alright, when all those are selected, I'm just going to zoom in just a little bit, and now you can come up here to object, come down here to rigid body, and choose connect, and it's going to create a constraint for all of these links, and it takes a few seconds, especially with a slower computer. Now we want to make a change here. We don't want this set to fixed, we want it set to hinge. So all of these constraints, instead of being fixed constraints, they're going to be hinges that can rotate on the z-axis, and we want it to be selected or chained by distance instead of selected to active. And you'll see what happens whenever it gets finished doing this. See how the links got spread out evenly and basically placed where you would think they should be, which is the median point between each link, which is right at the joint, you could say. Now we do need to make a little bit of a change on this one, and we need to essentially move this one to the joint. Grab and then just move this to the joint area. Most of the time it won't make any difference, but sometimes it does. I don't honestly remember if it will make a difference with this, but I generally put the constraints, especially like a hinge, where the joint would be, because it makes more sense. Alright, now we need to rotate half of these constraints in order to make the joint work correctly, because these constraints, other than this one, are set to be a hinge, so they will only rotate around the z-axis. Alright, now we want this chain to rotate down like this, so we need to turn this constraint. So with this first one selected, we need to select every other one and then just go all the way to the end of the chain, selecting every other constraint. And I'm shift selecting, that way I'm maintaining the selection I already had. Alright, now to get these to rotate correctly, the hinges, or the links to rotate correctly, we need to rotate all of these constraints on the x-axis by 90 degrees. Rotate, x, 90, enter. Because see, now this link will rotate this way, and this link will rotate this way. And every other one has a different rotation, so it makes it look more realistic. Alright, now let's add a wrecking ball to the end. I'm going to select this last one. I'm going to press Shift S, cursor to select it. That way whenever we create something right here, it will put it right here almost where it needs to be. Add mesh, and I'm just going to add a sphere. Alright, obviously we need this sphere to be bigger. Scale 6, enter. I actually want to make it a little bit bigger. Scale 2, enter. Alright, and since this will be a physics object, the scale is not applied, so let's apply the scale. Control A brings up this menu, and then choose scale. Alright, grab on the x-axis, G for grab, X for the x-axis, and then just move it so that the ball, or the wrecking ball, is right about halfway into, or this link is about halfway into the wrecking ball. Now come over here to the rigid body settings, and we need to add rigid body settings to this wrecking ball. We need this set to active, and the translation, we're going to go ahead and set this to 0.01, and then this one also to 0.01. I think those are good settings for this. And we do not want to use deactivation because we want this ball to fall right away. Alright, now we need to have more weight here. In this case, I'm going to set it to 100. And now we need to connect this ball to this link. So with this ball selected, shift select this one, come up here to object, and of course connect. Now we want this one to be a fixed, so change this to fixed. And you don't need to do this, but I do this just because it helps it make sense in my head. I will press G for grab and then move this to where the connection is. It just makes more sense in my head. Alright, and once again, we need to override the iterations, set this to 200, and we're good to go at this point. Now before we do anything else, let's come up here to File, Save, and I'm just going to name this Toot. Name it whatever you want, but before you do any physics simulation itself, make sure you save your work, otherwise you may lose it. But at this point, if everything is done correctly, if I press play, this ball should swing down and hit these cubes, and it'd be all kinds of fun. Alright, press play. Well, I forgot to make the floor a rigid body object, obviously, because everything's falling through the floor. So let's select this floor and choose rigid body, change it from active to passive because we don't want the floor to fall with gravity. So let's try it one more time. We click play. Now obviously the ball is going to hit the floor because the chain is too long. Alright, now there's several ways we could fix this. I will describe one way, and then I'll show you the easy way. Probably we could actually shorten the length of the chain, but that's more work. The simple solution is just to select this cube, press B for box select, select all of that, press G for grab, Z for the Z axis, and then just move it up a little bit. Now let's press play one more time. Still too long. So go back to the beginning. G for grab, Z for the Z axis. And that one should be a winner. A winner, chicken dinner. Now we can see that this ball is actually too light. It should smash through it better. So go back to the beginning, select this sphere, and then set this to 500 kilograms. Alright, now press play. It should smash through it so much better now. Of course, we've run into a little bit of a different issue now. The chain stretched a little bit. We don't want the chain to stretch. So we can do one of two things. We can either go through, the best way to go about it would be to zoom in, select each constraint. Oh, see, that's why. So I forgot to do that. I got so concerned about making sure this one at the end here was this one was set to 200. I forgot to set the rest of them to 200. So now we're gonna just go ahead, and I'm just gonna go ahead and go through one by one, selecting them and setting it to 200. So I'm gonna fast forward through this. 200, select the next one, override 200, and then just keep going down the whole length of the chain. Alright, now I got all those changed to 200, which I should have did earlier. Hope I didn't confuse you with that. Alright, only thing that's going to do is make the connections less stretchy. Alright, so let's click play and see how much higher up the ball is now. Alright, that looks way better. So it's not a complicated tutorial, it's just kind of long because there is a lot of little things involved in it. But that's pretty much it. And of course, if you wanted to duplicate this whole chain, all you have to do is press just select one of the objects and then press B for box select, and make sure you get all the constraints, all the chain parts and all of it together. And then like go to top side view, press shift D, enter, and then in this case I'm going to press R for rotate, Z for the Z axis, and then 180 degrees, and then grab on the X axis and then bring it to about right there. And see, now we have two of them. Back in the front side view, and let's click play. Now you have two balls. So once you get the basic structure of it built and understand how to do that, making something a little bit more complicated out of it becomes really, really easy. But anyway, I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and if you have any questions, leave a comment below and I will try to answer it. I guess that's it. Later, people.